the off-season's a great time to get caught up in some classic races. So I made a list of some of my favorites. NASCAR off-season's kind of short compared to a lot of other sports, but sometimes it can still feel a little bit long. Luckily, on YouTube, you can watch hundreds of classic races basically for free. So I made a list of some of my favorite classic races and I thought I'd share them with you. Now, I'm not going to go in and spoil the whole race for you. I'm not going to tell you who won and all that stuff, but I'm going to go in and tell you a little bit about these classic races and why I think you should watch them. And I'm going to make several of these videos. So I got a whole series of them I'm going to come up with. I thought it'd be good to put some variety in here. Some of these are more well known than others, but what they do all have in common is that they're great races. So let's talk about them. The first race I want to talk about is the 1979 Daytona 500. This is arguably one of the most important races in NASCAR history. It was the very first race to be broadcasted flag to flag live on television. Bill France Jr. negotiated for months to work out a deal with CBS to broadcast this race flag to flag, and it ended up raining on race day. CBS almost pulled the plug, but then Bill France Jr. had a great idea and decided, let's start the race under caution and let the cars dry the track. The heat off the engines actually ended up drying the track relatively quickly. You can watch during the pace laps, there's water everywhere, especially around the apron. You can tell all the grass is just muddy and nasty. Not fun. To make things even more interesting, there was a massive snowstorm that hit the Northeast and parts of the Midwest. So people were snowed in their houses. And you gotta remember, TVs back in the day, they didn't have hundreds or thousands of channels like we have today. They only had a small selection. So for NASCAR to be on and for people to be able to just flip through these channels while they're snowed in their house and to come across the Daytona 500 of all races, that's a pretty great thing for the sport. So with a bunch of new eyeballs, the sport really had to deliver a really good show, and it did. This is one of the best races in NASCAR history, and it has all the hallmarks of a classic Daytona 500. And there was even a fist fight at the end of the race. I highly recommend you watch the 1979 Daytona 500. The next race I recommend you go watch is the 1988 Budweiser 400 at Riverside International Raceway. Riverside International Raceway was a road course that we raced at from like 1963 to 1988. Unfortunately, they tore it down, but it was revered as one of the best road courses in the country, and this race definitely shows why. It was kind of a dangerous, hot and slick racetrack with bad visibility because of all the dust. There's tons of passing zones. It's a very good racetrack for stock cars in particular. And it's kind of like a better version of Sonoma in my opinion. It's like if Sonoma was a little bit better suited for stock cars. That's kind of what I think of Riverside as. And it's a true shame that this racetrack doesn't exist anymore because it was really special and something really great. The starting grid from this last race at the racetrack is just, it's like classic NASCAR. You have Dale Earnhardt, Rusty Wallace, Davey Allison. Current Cup Series owner Rick Hendrick actually made one of his few Cup Series starts in this race. Even just for that, I highly recommend you go watch it, but I promise this track will not disappoint. The last race I'm going to recommend in this episode is the 1999 GOODY'S Headache Powder 500. Bristol Motor Speedway in the late 90s is about as perfect as Bristol Motor Speedway ever could or will be probably. Now people like to complain about the way Bristol Motor Speedway is today, and races like this are kind of the reason why. Now to be fair, I like the way Bristol is today. In the corners, you can find speed up on the top, you can find speed on the bottom, you can find speed in the middle of the racetrack. But back in the late 90s, pretty much when you're getting into the corner, you wanted to be on the bottom. And that kind of cultivated the classic Bristol bump and run, which we don't really see like we used to. Used to, you could drive in a little bit deeper into the corner than the guy in front of you, get into his bumper a little bit, he'd move up the racetrack, you get your nose in there a little bit further, and then you can get a better run off the corner and complete a pass. So you don't really see the bump and run like you used to, just because the track races so differently. It's just not as necessary, and the cars are so sensitive these days. You know, you don't want to hurt your race car too much. So this race has the hallmarks of a classic Bristol race in my opinion. And if you haven't watched a classic Bristol race, this is a great one to watch. Tony Stewart started on the pole in this race, was pretty dominant for a lot of it, but wasn't quite there at the end. And I think the finish to this race was something really special, and I'm sure you've seen a highlight of it. Let me know about some of your favorite classic races in the comments below. I'm going to be making a few more of these throughout the off season, so if I like one of your suggestions, maybe I'll throw it in there. Also, please subscribe if you want to. I think I make some halfway decent videos, so if you like them, subscribe and you'll get to see more of them. Hit the bell icon, like this video, do all the YouTube stuff. Also, follow me on Twitter or Instagram. Links for those are in the description below. But until next time, my name's Tyler, this is Tight End Loose Off, and I'll see you later.